Hello, hello, hello. Hope you're all having a fantastic weekend. It's been a long time. I haven't been able to be home basically the entirety of June, so this is going to be the first stream in over a month, I think, except for the DC20 stream, which was a bit special. Managed to just barely sneak it into my schedule. Hello, Fedmar. So for everyone who's new or who's watching this later, hi, I'm Trek, and as you can see from the Eldritch signs in the background, I happen to be a game designer. This is a tabletop RPG I'm making called Playful, and these streams are basically just me going through everything that needs to be done so that this game is actually playable, which it is not right now. I mean, it's free online, you can register and check out the rules if you want, but I wouldn't recommend running a campaign for it just yet. I've managed to run a bunch of playtests in the past month, even though I wasn't home. So at least we do have a lot of content to go through. These points I've listed here, most of them are in French, I think, so I'm gonna have to live translate them. Sorry about that. I just happen to run my games in French. So, hello, what is this? So this is the playtest feedback for the game I'm making, called Playful. So this is a sci-fi post-apocalyptic tabletop RPG. Basically, the world was destroyed by a solar flare. Not destroyed entirely, but like most of the technology was fried, and that means all of civilization is having a rough time. And your characters are explorers and scavengers in this fried, very destroyed world. So I've managed to run a bunch of playtests. I'm just gonna go through them on stream. I've already gone through them on Discord, just because I didn't have a creative outlet at the time, but I do want to have them in video format, just in case I happen to want to make a clip out of this at a later date. So the first thing I ran was actually not this game at all. It was this thing. So this is an experimental 2-page RPG I've put together just for the purposes of trying to experiment with a bunch of new concepts. There were... let's boil it down to 3 things I wanted to experiment with in this thing. The first one, if you've watched my very first video on my channel, is going to sound very familiar, because this is the zone-based combat. So in D&D and a bunch of other tactical tabletop RPGs, you have usually a grid or theater of the mind. What I wanted to experiment with was this concept that you kind of see a bit in 2D20 games, the Modifiers games like Fallout, and I think they're also doing Star Trek. Can you download it somewhere? I can put it on Discord. The problem is, right now I'm showing you the English version, which I put together so I could show it to a bunch of other designers, so they could critique it before I ran my playtest. But what I actually ended up running was this other thing, which is a bit longer and apparently is kind of glitched. But this is in French, so my players would actually be able to understand it. So this is based on a bunch of feedback I already got on this thing. I made a bunch of improvements, but just to sum it up, so we have zone-based combat. The idea here is, unlike the 2D20 games from Modifius, I wanted to focus more on the connections and the properties between the different zones. Because since this is a modern game, right? Not as in it was made recently, but as in it's set in the modern world. it's a game with a lot of ranged combat, right? You have firearms and all of that nonsense. And the way firearms work and ranged combat works, you're usually not fighting people who are in the same room as yourself. You're usually fighting people in the next room over. So instead of focusing on the properties of the actual zones, I wanted to focus on the properties of the connections between the zones. So I have a list actually here of the different properties I wanted to experiment with. Again, this is a very early draft. I actually have a lot more in here. This is the list I ended up playing with for the actual playtest. It's just this is in French. And this was generally... It was received pretty well at the table. It ran decently smoothly. The problem is, it put a lot of focus on my descriptions as a GM, because if all you have is this very abstract rectangle, then I have to put in a lot of work to convey what this rectangle means to my players. So what I think I'm going to end up doing when it comes to zone-based combat is Flareful, my game, is going to stay grid-based, and I might add some optional rules and guidance for Theatre of the Mind, just because I know a lot of people enjoy that. But in the GM section, I'm going to use all of this vocabulary and these mechanics that I have designed for the zone-based combat, and use them as guidelines to help people create interesting battle maps. The reason I want to use this vocabulary, it's really easy to communicate to like a new GM or someone who doesn't have a whole lot of experience what we call metrics. So that's basically, for example, in D&D, we have a metric which is very well known, which is a combat encounter should last 3 to 5 rounds of combat. And that tells you as a GM, if your combat encounter lasted only a single round and your players didn't have fun, you can immediately go, okay, that means I did something wrong. I'm gonna fix that. I have an angle. I know exactly what to work on. And similarly for battlefield design or for battle map design, if I tell you, okay, your map needs at least 5 different zones, that immediately tells you, okay, my last combat encounter didn't work out so well, it was kind of boring, but now I have a metric, and I have the tools, and I have the vocabulary, and I can actually talk about why things went wrong, so I can fix it in the future. So that's kind of where I think I'm going with this. Hi, may I ask how you would handle verticality in top-down maps? With a lot of trouble. I know Foundry VTT has a bunch of modules for this, which make it a lot easier. But on Roll20, which I use, it's not very easy. Actually, I have Roll20 open just because I wanted to be able to show some stuff if I needed to. So this is one of the playtests I ran, actually. This is the data center map I made on stream the other day. This is a different playtest I have run. It's a mall. And the way I handled verticality on this map, right, because you should be able to like climb on the roof and avoid a bunch of obstacles and enemies this way, is I put the roof map on the side. So yeah, the way I handle it right now is I kind of don't, unfortunately. I wish there was a better opportunity, like a better option to solve this, but I haven't found it, at least not on Roll20. Hello, welcome everyone. So for this playtest, there was a second thing I wanted to try, which was reaction-based combat. So this one is going to be super nerdy. The idea, and I have actually, I think I have a graph or some kind of a diagram for this. It should be around here. No, maybe on this web browser. Well, I can't find it, so I'll just draw it again. It's a really simple diagram. So the idea, just gonna move this over here. So in D&D and in Playerful right now, during combat you have one person's turn, then another person's turn, etc. And during a turn, you generally have one person making decisions. So let's say you have the red player, they're making 3 decisions on this turn, and then it's the blue player's turn, so they're making 3 decisions on their turn. And that's fine, right? That's kind of the idea of having a multiple action system like Pathfinder, etc. is to make it so with just 4 different actions like attack, dodge, move, you can already have dozens and dozens of different turns, just because you can have attack, 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 you can have attack, attack, move, attack, dodge, move, etc. So that's really good. The only problem is during this turn, so that could take maybe 2 minutes if your player is really slow, nobody else at the table is making decisions. So everyone else is not really engaged. So what I wanted to try was to take this, and instead of focusing the game on actions, I wanted to focus the game on reactions. So on the red player's turn, the red player, what they're doing is basically doing a special type of action where they're creating a problem, and then maybe the blue player is going to go, okay, I'm going to help you create this problem and make it even worse, and then maybe the orange enemy is going to try to respond and try to maybe block this problem, and they're going to fail, so the red player wins. And then same thing on the blue player's turn, where everyone else gets to react. So that's kind of the idea, right? You still get to make a lot of decisions in a single round, but those decisions are spread out between different creatures' turns. That's kind of what I wanted to do. So in terms of mechanics, if we go here, I'm just gonna give you the example. No, actually, let's go through this. So the way I wanted to, the way I had set it up was this. So every main action involves some kind of a roll. So you have 2 different actions in this version of the system. So one action would be, for example, attack. And so you make a roll, and then everyone else gets to try to challenge that roll. So an ally could try to, so an enemy could try to challenge that roll by doing a counter, and if they succeed, they counter your attack. An ally could try to then help you, and if they win against the enemy who has already increased the DC, so you this is really hard to explain, and you're kind of getting why the live version of exactly why this was a bit of a problem and why I don't think I'm going to be moving along with forward with this idea. It's just kind of a mess. It ended up being way too hard to run. I can't even think of a way to represent this visually. So you had this concept of an NT which increases throughout the round. So the creature who is doing that main action, they have a bit of an advantage since they're the first person to actually make a roll. So they have a higher chance of this succeeding than this succeeding. But yeah, it was not good. It was not good. And I also had a bunch of tokens inspired by Panic at the Dojo, and I had so many things going on. It was not good. But I realized one thing, which is that what I was going for, more importantly, isn't really the idea that players are creating a problem and then the enemies get to react to it. To me, that's way more interesting if it's an enemy who creates a problem and then the players try to react to it. That is the part that was really interesting to me. So I ended up creating a new mechanic. If we go to Creatures of the Wasteland. Now, and this has been actually really successful in the other playtests I've run since then, we have this concept called telegraphed actions. The idea is that at the end of a turn of a creature controlled by the plot twister, which is the GM for this game, the plot twister can choose for this creature to telegraph an action it intends to take on its next turn. The first time the creature takes the telegraphed action on its next turn, it has advantage on any die roll it makes, including damage rolls. That's just how it works in this game, as part of this action. So let's say you have a big robot, like this guy. This guy is going to telegraph that he's going to use his stun baton. And so on its next turn, the first time it uses its stun baton, it gets to roll twice and take the highest roll, so 12 in this case. Where it gets kind of silly and where it gets kind of interesting is that some attacks can have special effects, additional effects, if they were telegraphed. So one example I give here is the robot has a giant stomp attack, which deals 3d6 damage in a 3 meters radius around itself. But if this action was telegraphed, then the radius increases to 6 meters. So that ended up being really successful. This actually created this dynamic that I'm looking for, which is the bad guys create a problem, and the players have to react to that problem by moving around, adapting to the situation. That's kind of what I'm shooting for with this system. I want the players to basically never take the same action, the same turn twice. That's kind of my goal. It's really hard, but just having these mechanics to play with is really helpful. Then we had another playtest a bit later. Let me see through my notes. Oh yeah, the stealth. So I overhauled stealth, but then I played on a map that looked like, if I can show it on stream, it looked like this, and it's called Mad Max, so that should already tell you all you need to know. Yeah, that map did not lend itself very well to stealth. There was a lot of explosions, so we had fun, that's important. But stealth was not a thing we got to try. But I did overhaul stealth. So let me just get OBS. Okay, here. Where is stealth? It should be over here, hiding. So I had a rule for stealth, which was kind of a temporary, boring kind of thing. Just to say, hey, I want you to eventually be able to hide. I just don't know what that will look like yet. But now I think we have a pretty good system for this. So the idea here is I want to avoid a situation Hey Trek, love your video about Kraken Week. Thank you. This was a whole... this was at once very stressful and a lot of fun, just because I didn't know about Kraken Week until like a week before, so I had to really, really work really hard to get it done in time. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. Glad you enjoyed it. So I have a bit of a system where the goal is to avoid the situation where players, let's say there's like a wall over here and then an enemy on the other side, and then the player is over here. Just gonna make him green and then this guy red. The situation I wanted to avoid was the player being here, completely hidden, and going, I want to roll stealth. So they make a roll and they see that they roll very low, so they know that their roll is really bad, and so they decide, okay, that's where I'm going to end my turn. I'm not going to move anymore. The roll, I think, is something that should be kept for the last possible moment, so that if you fail, there's immediate consequences. That's kind of my outlook on how stealth should work in a combat game in general. So in this case, what I introduced was the concept of being exposed. So let's say like this is the sight line of the enemy. So if you're basically anywhere in this area, at any point, when you enter is when you make the roll. So this is how it works mechanically. You can hide. Hide is an action. All that happens when you hide is that if a hostile creature can see you, it fails. You just wasted 5 action points. It's too bad, but it is what it is. Usually a player will be smart enough not to do it. The only time where I would see this actually coming into play is if a hostile creature is hidden from you, so you don't see them, but they actually can see you, so if you hide, your action fails, basically. But that's all that happens. You don't roll when you take the hide action. Then, at the end of each of your turns, if a creature can see you, so if you are in this graph, if you end your turn anywhere in this area, you're no longer hidden. But also, if your movement or the movement of another creature causes you to be within the line of sight of an enemy, you are exposed. So there's 2 ways this can happen, right? So either you move into the area, or the enemy moves like this, maybe. So that means their sightline is now something like this. So now they can see anyone who is in this area. That includes you, so you are exposed. And that's when you roll. So when you roll stealth against the stealth DC listed on the creature stat block. So that's another thing. I didn't want to have too many rolls. So the stat blocks actually have a stealth DC on them. If I pick like the scav stat block, for example, it's this thing over here, stealth DC 8. The DC is basically just going, is it a creature who is especially good at being a guard? In this case, it might be higher. Otherwise, I'm just going to default to an easy DC. If the creature cannot see you, you have advantage. That means basically if you have darkness, or if you have fog, for example, you are within line of sight, so you have to roll. But because it cannot see you, you are in darkness or you are in fog, you have advantage. That's basically the idea. And then there's a bunch of words to say that if multiple creatures can see you, you only make a single roll. just because I don't like rolling too much. I get that rolling dice is fun, but sometimes I also want the story to get moving. There's also a system for stealth takedowns, because this is not a fantasy game. So I don't really have to worry about things like not wanting the players to be able to one-shot a dragon. There's no dragons here, right? So I don't think there's a single creature I want to introduce to this game that would be important enough that would want the players to be unable to one-shot them. So stealth takedowns, totally a thing. Only works on humanoids and animals. There's also robots in this game, so there could be, I guess, a giant robot and you're not going to be able to hit them in their sleep. But that's kind of it. So yeah, and we have a bunch of nice little diagrams as well. Where is it? Oh no, the white background completely in. Ugh, I forgot about that. I don't know if I can fix this. If I can force the background to be black on these. I'll have to check that out later. I also had a third playtest, I think. Oh yeah, there's another problem we identified as part of one of the playtests. So this is an action point system, as I mentioned earlier. The way it works... Why is it not loading? Okay. So you have a number of action points equal to 10 plus your speed, and then actions generally take about 5 action points. But it could be more, it could be less. So for example, movement is just 1 action point per square, meter, whatever you want to call them. Then we also have the improvise and use an object action, which are only 3 action points, just because these are the most interesting generally, so I want to encourage the players to do them more often. And then for the weapons... Oops. For the weapons, the amount of action points it takes to attack depends on the weapon. So brass knuckles, for example, it's just 4 action points. But then you have the jackhammer gauntlets, which are 6 action points. So it hovers around 5 action points per attack, but it depends a bit. The problem we encountered with that, the problem I was personally worried about was that players would take too long to calculate how many action points their stuff would take. In practice, that hasn't really been a problem. But I still am careful about this just because I know there are some people with dyscalculia. So I might have to figure out a solution for that. But the problem that I did not expect that we encountered is that, let's say you have 14 action points and you're using a pistol, so each attack is 4 action points. That means you can attack 3 times in your turn. But then you have 2 action points which are kind of left over. And that means you end your turn with unused resources. Right? Your turn, ideally, I think it should end on it should end on a bang. It should end on a really positive, high impact moment where you finally get to deal a bunch of damage, etc. But because you end your turn with a bunch of unused action points that you can't really do anything with, what ended up happening was every end of turn felt kind of like a downbeat instead of an upbeat. So that was a bit of a problem. So in order to fix that, what I've tried to experiment with was introducing a new action, the help action, which doesn't do what the help action does in a lot of D&D-like systems. In this case, you're just giving a bunch of action points to an ally you can see. Right now it's up to your presence, which is one of your... Oops. To one of your 4 stats. 5 stat. But I think we're going to change the numbers a bit as we iterate on this. But the idea that, yeah, if you still have a couple points left over, it's fine. You can just give them to an ally, and that means nothing gets wasted. Your ally is going to have 16 action points. They're going to feel like an absolute invincible monster on their turn, thanks to you. So this has been pretty successful. I just need to tweak the exact amount that you can give. I don't want you to be able to give every single one of your action points for one very specific reason. The way armor works in this game, the way I like to explain it to people who have played 5e is it's kind of like temporary hit points, except they recharge at the start of every single creature's turn. So let's say you have an enemy who is a big robot, they have 15 armor. And you are a tiny little human with a tiny little pea shooter, so you deal 5 damage per attack. And as we said, you can probably attack about 3 times in your turn. So that means, if all you do on your turn is just attack, 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 you're probably going to deal like 1 or 2 damages. But if you have an ally who helps you, instead of 1 or 2 damages, you might just deal like 5, 10 damage. So a little bit of help from your teammates can make a huge difference. That's why I designed it this way. The problem is if I let people help you too much, right? If I let people give you all of their action points instead of just a few of them, then you can do this, and suddenly you're dealing a whole lot more damage. So I need to be very careful about the limits I put on this system. But generally speaking, this new action, the help action, has been very positive. We just need to tweak it a bit. Did I have any other playtest I needed to run? Oh yeah, I also had something else come up. For the first time, we had some players who were downed, so we got to play with the downed rules for this game. So where is it? It should be in hit points, I think. Kind of. So this is inspired by, I think it's Daggerheart, which does something like this. But more importantly, there's a new condition called downed. So when you have 0 hit points, you can still act. You're not unconscious when you have 0 hit points, but you can only take 1 action on your turn, which cannot be sprint, because one time I let my players do this. It was kind of silly. We had a player who was downed. Let me pull up Roll20. In the data center. One character, I think it was this guy. He was downed in melee to this guy. So 0 hit points, completely vulnerable. But he could take 1 action, so he took the sprint action, which is sprint up to 10 meters in a straight line. So this guy who had just described was on his knees, just took a massive sprint to the other side of the map. There's a tunnel here, by the way, in case it's not really clear on the map. Which, to be fair, it probably isn't, because I had a bunch of explosions everywhere. So yeah, I think that's basically the only change we've made to this. Is just, yeah, maybe don't let people sprint when they're down. The rest of it, yeah, it was kind of fun. Maybe limit help AP based on a stat like charisma or something. That's what I'm doing right now. The problem is my stats go from 0 to 5. So a lot of players have 0 of what this system calls presence, which is basically charisma. So that's a bit awkward, because the exact playtest I wanted to try this on, one of the players just could not use this new action. He had 0 presence. So I might tweak the numbers a bit, make it maybe like presence plus luck, or like presence plus technique or something, just to ensure you can at least give 1 AP, or just maybe like 2 plus presence. I don't know. We're gonna need to figure this out, but that's just numbers. The way I like to approach most game design is try to get the fun ideas out the gate, and then you can tweak the numbers later. The tweaking numbers parts, to me, that's the easy part. We can do it later. But if you have a fun idea, you could make it balanced. But if you have an unfun idea, balancing it will generally not make it any more fun. So that's kind of the reason why I choose to approach things this way. Did I have another playtest beyond this? Not really that I can see on Discord. Okay, so I just had one more playtest, which resulted in me taking a bunch of notes. So this is mostly like small, tiny quality of life changes. So the rest of the stream is probably just going to be me going through these one by one. And yeah, so if you have any questions about game design, about like what my next video is going to be, etc., yeah, feel free to, because yeah, I'm here for the next couple hours, so feel free to ask questions, interact in the chat. Let's go through them one by one. So this first one is, I failed to notice that the silencer pistol mod interacts with stealth, which I had just overhauled. So I need to think about what a silencer means with that new stealth system I just implemented. So if I go to the mods. Okay, so before overhauling how stealth works, I had basically this. I had basically set it up as a 5e version of stealth, right? So attacking while hidden reveals your position, etc. And so the effect I had put on the silencer back then was attacking while hidden does not reveal your location unless the enemy is within 3 meters of you or 3 meters of the target. So that's not gonna work anymore. How do I handle this? Because right now, attacks don't really do anything while hidden. They don't reveal your position or anything. Maybe that's a problem, actually. Maybe this new stealth system is just missing a bit of detail about that. The reason I had no positive effect on attacks while hidden, this is kind of silly in a sense, but I had put hide as a defensive action. So you have 3 defensive actions in this game. You have dodge, brace, and hide. Each of them is tied to a different attribute. So brace is a vigor or strength action, dodge is technique, and then hide is technically speed, because if you're rolling stealth, you're rolling speed, which is dexterity in this system. So if I make this action not just a defensive action where the effect is that people cannot attack you, if I give this an offensive boost as well, it's going to overshadow everything else. So I guess maybe the solution here would be something like, I don't give you a positive, like a bonus for attacking while hidden, but I do end your condition of being hidden if you attack while hidden. That's not really good. Another way I could tackle this is I could add a weapon property. So right now I have those weapon properties: melee, thrown, ranged, area of effect, rare ammo, reload, two-handed. I could add a weapon property called loud, which makes it so if you attack with this weapon while hidden, it reveals your position, you're no longer hidden. I think that's what I'm going to try, at least. I don't know if it's going to stay, but that's what I'm going to try for the next playtest. Where's my weapon props? I think it's in enumerations. Yep. What's the order I want them in? Probably here. So if you attack with this weapon while hidden, that's going to be a link to the rules for hiding. You are no longer hidden. Why not silent instead of loud? That's a good question. Because since this is a modern game with a bunch of firearms, the default is probably going to be loud, yeah. if I go through the list, we have fisticuffs, so the impact weapons. I guess you could call them loud. I mean, that's a pretty big impact. Bludgeoning weapons also going to be an impact. And we have finesse weapons, so those you could argue would be silent, I guess. And then we have a chainsaw. Not exactly the most silent weapon of all time. And a blowtorch, also kind of noisy. And a bunch of pistols, a bunch of rifles, a bunch of heavy weapons, and a bunch of grenades. Okay, so yeah, I'm probably gonna make loud the default, and then silent the exception. What's cooking? I'm going through a bunch of playtest feedback for my game, Flaffle. In this case, I have overhauled the way stealth works, but I have not overhauled the way silencers work. What are you building this in? So this is a Next.js app, so super simple stuff. I have no plans on reinventing the wheel. This is just what a lot of websites run on these days. So attacking with this weapon while hidden does not reveal your location. And then I just add a tooltip for what hiding means. So if I go back to the weapons, we should have the silent property added to the list. Then I need to actually update the rules for hiding. And add something here, which says attacking while hidden. If you attack a creature while you are hidden, you're no longer hidden unless the attack was made with a silent weapon. So now these two should link to each other infinitely. This is normal. Don't worry about it too much. And then I guess I just need to actually add it to the weapons. What's the difference between brass knuckles and unarmed attack? Why do I use this? Do I use this at all? Ah, I just use it in the default character sheet when you create a new character. That's the one attack that is created for you. Okay, so I don't need to change this, I guess. Do we want to make unarmed attacks silent? Because it could be pretty cool, but I could also make it a feat. And then you get to be pretty cool when everyone else is kind of lame. I'll just write it down so I don't forget. New perk. That's a maybe. We'll see if it makes the cut. But might as well write it down for later. Jackhammer Gauntlet is absolutely not going to be silent. Stun Baton, not going to be silent. If you've played 7 Days to Die, you know exactly how noisy this can be. Or just watched any Michael Reeves video ever, basically. Baseball Bat, also not silent. Sledgehammer, even less so. Combat Knife, yeah, this thing is going to be silent. Properties. Then there's the machete. How do you guys say it in English? Then there's the machete. I'm going to choose for you how to pronounce this thing. It's now called a machete. Silent. Chainsaw, not silent. Blowtorch, not silent. Hey Michael, welcome to the stream. Blowtorch, absolutely not silent. Makeshift pistol, not silent. Regular pistol, not silent. Revolver, not silent. These can all just take the weapon mod to become silent. Machete. Why? You guys write it the exact same way we do. Why? Okay, machine gun, sniper rifle, dart gun. Oh yeah, this thing is going to be silent. Ghost rifle. So the idea of this is that it's an electrical, like, magnet railgun, basically. I don't think this should make a lot of noise, right? Unless the actual coils make like a whirring sound, I guess. They try to imitate the Spanish pronunciation. That could be the reason, yeah. A machete. It comes from the word macho? Is that true? I learned something cool today. Ghost rifle, speech jammer. I'm gonna put it in comment. Just so I can maybe return to this later. After asking, so one of my players is actually like a physics researcher by trade. That's what he does. So I can ask him, hey, would a ghost rifle make a lot of noise? And then I'm gonna have an answer for this. Speech jammer, so this is like the opposite of silent. This is just telling, like, this is just sending a bunch of sound waves. Rocket launcher, no, you can't really put a silencer on this. Grenade launcher. The impact might make a noise. Oh, absolutely. You know what? I'm gonna make it silent, and then if that player is angry at me, then maybe I'll remove it. But it sounds too cool for me not to do it. Rocket launcher, grenade launcher, Flamethrower. Yeah, I'm pretty sure a flamethrower is going to reveal your location regardless of whether or not it makes noise. Just on the account that there's bright fire between you and the target. Scrap gun. Hard like brick launcher. This would actually be silent, I think. Oh, but yeah, same reason. Hard light is actually light. So yeah, it would actually be a silent weapon, but it would definitely reveal your location. And then the grenades. So that is not a problem. Smoke grenade. Do I want the smoke grenade to be silent? Probably. Because this is definitely a stealth weapon or a stealth utility. And then mine as well. Like setting the mine shouldn't reveal your location. Okay, that sounds good to me. So we have updated the stealth rule, we have updated the list of weapon props, we have applied that weapon props. Just need to actually change the mod. And the effect of that is going to be this weapon gains the silent property. And I'm just gonna add a filter to the weapons which can get this mod. So right now it's every firearm which deals piercing damage. I'm just gonna add another filter which is R dot, so the weapon that's just a string of weapons. Okay, I'm gonna need to do it like this instead. Filter, where the damage type is piercing and the category is handgun or rifle. It ends here, and the weapon dot properties dot includes or not find silent. Okay, so now we have a filter for weapons which deal piercing damage. There must be a handgun or a rifle, and they cannot already have the silent property. Hi, welcome, Henrique. You could have a spectacle property that reveals your position. I'm already kind of revealing your position regardless of whether they can see the target or you. I'm just saying you're not hidden if you attack with a loud weapon. So that wouldn't work right out the gate, but you're tempting me to create like basically anything that has the spectacle property. I just need to figure out what the spectacle property would mean. Okay, let's just check if there's any bugs in here. Silencer. Okay, I apparently messed up the tag. Oh, yeah. Okay, now it works properly. So, pistol, revolver, machine gun, sniper rifle. Yeah, that works for me. Okay, I think that's a good way to handle it. We'll see if I'm completely wrong in the next playtest, because one of my players is definitely going to play whatever version of Rogue exists in whatever game he's playing. So this thing will see some use, for sure. Something that could negate the silent property. Also, you could have something that's silent and then... So instead of just not giving the silent property, you would have the silent property and then something that cancels it. That feels a bit too crunchy to me. I guess the problem would be the term silent already gives you, okay, this is about noise. So maybe I could call this weapon, this property something else, like stealthy? Because the less weapon properties I can work with, the better, just generally. I think. Okay, let's go through the rest of the playtest. So this thing I can mark as done. So this was a player option problem. I don't remember which perk tree they're in. Okay, so the Ravager. So we have Chaos Incarnate, and then we had a second one, which was Make It Rain. This thing, also on the Ravager, just tier 4. So what do these two do? So Chaos Incarnate, if you have made at least 4 attacks this turn, you can choose one creature within 5 meters of you. The creature must succeed on a medium vigor or presence check, or it is frightened of you until the start of your next turn. So this sounded really cool to my players. They really wanted to use it. But in practice, that player happened to choose a weapon which I think was the shotgun, for which doing 4 attacks in a single turn was basically impossible. The weapon was just too slow. So the problem with that is a player who is new to the game might not realize that their weapon choice is incompatible with their perk choice. And that's something I generally don't want. I would rather have synergies be a thing, but not anti-synergies. I just know I've had players who will argue about, well, this technically should be silent. Oh no, I hate that you're right about this. I've had the exact same arguments. I'm gonna ask Google. Stealthy synonym. Furtive. Sly. Clandestine, that's a different thing. Covert. Covert would be good, I think, out of these. Oh, I'm on the list. Yeah, Covert sounds the best out of these, I think. Unless there's something better on Thesaurus, Thesaurus, whatever you call it. What about synonyms to covert? Or fjord? Furtive. Thank you, pronunciation guide. Yeah, let's go with covert. I'll just change it before it actually becomes a problem. So, enonyms. Then the rules for hiding. Then the weapon mods. And then the actual weapons. Okay, that's better. Okay, so back to this player option. Sorry for dragging you back to the topic. Chat delays can be real sometimes. Yeah, I know, like especially with my internet connection, which is not the best. It's okay. It's part of a stream experience. And if it ends up resulting in a game which is just worded better, even though I'm not a native English speaker, I consider this an absolute win, personally. Chaos Incarnate. How do I make this work? Basically, I don't think your class should restrict your weapon choices. It should be like, it's kind of something I touched on in the DC-20 review, where in 5e you have one choice, inform the next one, inform the next one, inform the next one, and you end up being kind of pigeonholed into like 2 or 3 very specific builds for each class. If I can avoid this and instead have a list of weapons and a list of class, and one multiplies the other rather than pigeonholes the other, that would probably be a more fun game. So that's something I need to be careful on. But I haven't made a stream about the class system yet. So this is still very much a first draft for basically all of these. So there's very strong chances a lot of these are going to change over time. Just for the sake of being clear about this, I'm not married to any of the ideas in here. In this case, the idea was... the idea that you can make a creature frightened of you is really cool. It really falls into the image I have of what a Ravager is, which is basically an absolute mad person who is walking into the wasteland and just shooting everything there inside. instead of just acting like a scared person, which they probably should if they value their life. So this idea of scaring people because you're just acting that recklessly, that worked. It's just the trigger, I think, which was the problem. Where the trigger was something that was only realistically usable with a very small selection of weapons. Maybe make it dependent on the percentage of AP spent on attacking. So that's one idea I was kind of mulling over in my head. Let's go to perks. Let's just separate these two sentences. So let's replace this thing with if you have spent, or what was the original wording? Yeah. At the end of your turn, if you have spent less than 5 AP on actions other than attacking, make a presence check. And that's not great because there's a lot of situations where, let's say you're downed, so you only have one action per turn. So you use your one action to administer a steam pack to yourself or something. And that would trigger under this wording. Same thing with if I say if you've spent more than half your action points on attacking. Actually, let's try this. I think that would work if I just say, if you're not downed. So let's try this. At the end of your turn, if you have spent more than half your maximum AP on attacks, you can choose one creature you can see and attempt to terrify it. The creature must succeed on a medium vigor or presence check, or it is frightened of you until the start of your next turn. That could work. If you have only spent AP on attacks, spend the remainder of your AP to cause this fear thing. Ah. So that would be like a new action then. Let's try this. I'm just gonna comment this out. Sorry. You gain a new action, Terrify. Spend all of your remaining AP. At least one. Make a presence check. And yeah, we'll handle this later. You cannot take this action if you have taken an action other than attack this turn. That kind of works for me, I think. Do we want some kind of bonus depending on the amount of remaining AP you spend? Reduce a creature to 0 hit points. Yeah, I think there should be another one on here which ties into reducing creatures to 0 hit points. I don't remember which one. Oh, kill streak, yeah. Okay, so that's the capstone, so it's a bit different. But yeah, the capstone is directly inspired by XCOM. This is a very common capstone ability in XCOM where you basically gain one extra action whenever you reduce a creature to 0 hit points. Hey, you're new here, so I don't have a lot of context. Can you break down what the desired application for this skill is? So this is the Ravager class. There's different classes in this game. So they're more like perk trees. And generally speaking, players will pick perks from 2 different trees, so they get to kind of mix and match. It's not like there's a rule for multiclassing, it's just multiclassing is kind of the default. Just because you're not gonna have you're not gonna unlock the higher tier abilities before you basically you need to spend perk points. That's the stars here to unlock perks, but you're gonna gain more perk points. You're gonna gain perk points faster. Oh god, Sundays are really difficult. You're gonna gain perk points faster than you unlock new tiers. So you kind of have to pick and choose from at least 2 different trees. Just in general. So the Ravager is 1 perk tree, and it's basically the perk tree specialized in attacking a lot of times and being very reckless. So for example, the 2 tier 1 abilities, one of them is inspired by the 5e Barbarian, except this is a game with a lot of range attacks, so in this case you can basically attack recklessly at a range, and that's not really a problem. So until the start of your next turn, your attacks have advantage and attacks against you have advantage. And then the other one is whenever you make a ranged attack, if you don't have cover from your target and it doesn't have cover from you, the attack costs 1 less AP. So you get to make more attacks if you stand in a very vulnerable spot. So that's kind of the vibe for this class. It's kind of the reckless gunzerker kind of a class. Not a tank in any way, just a massive glass cannon. Do I already have a use for the intimidate skill? Like in the actions. Hand to hand, distract. That was kind of what I was looking at. Wouldn't using Terrify cancel out the bonus of the tier 4 Make It Rain? That is a true... There might be an anti-synergy here. I also have a bit of a philosophical problem with this perk tree, which is that one of the goals of this game, if we go to core principles, why did it open the actions in combat? Oh, it's because it's Firefox, so it opens the tab in a different spot than what I'm used to. One of the ideas for this game that I'm striving for is that the player should never feel like they have to take the same sequence of actions in 2 different encounters, or even 2 different turns. So the idea that this entire perk tree is dedicated to players who go attack, attack, attack on every single turn, it kind of feels like I'm shooting myself in the foot here, to be honest. Let's make it rain. At the end of your turn, if you are not taking any action except the attack action, you can make 1 additional attack without spending any AP. Ah. I think this particular perk has been tier 2, it has been tier 1, it has been tier 3, it has been every single tier. I don't know what to do with it. I know I want it somewhere, I think. Could make an exception, yes. Another thing that, like, since this is the first stream where I'm actually talking about the player options, another thing I have a bit of a problem with that I haven't just taken the time to solve yet. I know it's coming at some point or another, I just haven't had the time to do it yet, is right now, due to the way things are set up, where you have perk points and so the way you unlock, where is it? The way you unlock perk points is every level you gain 2. You start with 5 and then you gain 2 every levels. And then you unlock tiers at certain specific levels, so 3, 5, 7. So the way it is set up, you need to have at least one perk from the same tree in the tier before in order to unlock the next tier. And that's a bit of a problem to me because it makes it really difficult to add non-combat perks. Because if a player has a choice between a combat perk and a non-combat perk, they're pretty much always going to take the combat one, I feel. So I don't have a good solution for this yet. I know in some games they have like a different list for non-combat stuff. That might be a thing I explore in the future. Or maybe I could have intermediate tiers where tier 1 would be combat perks, and then tier 2 would be non-combat perks, and then tier 3 would be combat perks again. But then if I do that, players could just take tier 1 perks for every single class, and they're just going to destroy every single combat encounter because they're going to be so much more powerful in combat. If you inflict at least X damage down an enemy or land a critical hit, that could be the trigger, yeah. If this is a class that's about making a bunch of attacks, then you're gonna make more crits than other people. So a crit would actually be a pretty good trigger. There's also something else, which is in this game, the weapons which cost the least action points generally have the smallest dice, which means they crit more often as well. Quick Draw might have some anti-synergy with Make It Rain. What's Quick Draw? Tier 2, okay. On the first round of combat, if you are the first creature to get a turn, you can make one more attack without spending any action point. This thing also probably needs to change. My players haven't given me negative feedback about it, but they've also never picked it, which tells me it's probably not as attractive as it probably should be. So this entire tier 2 needs to change. Give me a sec, I'll just close my window. Okay, I'm back. Do we have an on-crit effect on this class? Not yet. But we have a lot of ways to increase the chance you crit. Like, this makes you do more attacks, and then this gives you advantage. Both of these increase your chance to actually get a crit. What about inflicting extra damage to creatures with less initiative than you? Ooh. That could be a thing. Let's try this. Let's try first the on crit effect. So the first time on your turn that you land a critical hit, rules, I don't remember which article this is. It's rules crit. Super simple. You can make a presence roll. No, you can choose a creature. It must make... Actually, that's just this part. I'll just uncomment this. So the first time you, on your turn, you land a critical hit, you can choose a creature you can see. The creature must succeed on a medium vigor of presence check, or it is frightened of you, which means it has disadvantage on a bunch of things, and it can't move in your direction until the start of your turn. That's okay-ish. I'm just kind of scared of this because scaring a robot kind of sounds silly to me. Assuming there's initiative. Yeah, the way initiative works is really not innovative in any way. I know a lot of systems do a lot with their initiative. They try to make it super interesting, super interactive. For me, I just want it to get out of the way as quickly as possible. Like, I need an initiative or things kind of don't run, but I'm not really interested in doing anything with it. So the way initiative works is just, you don't even roll for it. It's just static. If you have a speed of 5, your initiative is 5, period. Robots aren't just immune. There's nothing about it that says they... I could repeat it on every single stat block, I guess. But yeah, on the stat block, and this thing, this thing needs some work. I don't think, yeah, I don't have anything on here that says they're immune to being frightened. Oops, sorry for the flashbang. Just saw a short from you yesterday. Wanted to say I appreciate the philosophy of quality over quantity. Thank you. It's been a problem on YouTube because YouTube really values quantity, as it turns out. But I'm doing good, so can't really complain. Putting it on the stat block would allow you to have sentient robots who can actually be frightened. Which would be really funny. I'll write it down just because I'm not sure what to do about this yet. There's kind of two choices here. Either I add a condition immunity field to every stat block, or in the actual stat block, I add a trait. If I go to this guy, it already has 3 traits. I guess I could put it in the robot trait. Because I think this, yeah, this is on every single robot right now. But yeah, yeah, let's just do that. Let's just update the robot trait. Putting it on the stat block would allow you to have... Oh, I already read that, sorry. Frightened might just be interpreted differently for robots. Like it's not an emotional response, but rather the programming has something about self-preservation. Ah. So it would be something like it still can't move in your direction, but maybe it doesn't have disadvantage on attacks or something. Mechanically, I guess that could be the representation. So while in sunlight or fully submerged, the spider drone is incapacitated. Additionally, the spider... Let's put the bonuses first and then the weaknesses later. I cannot type today, wow. I had to do a 5 times take for this thing. So the spider drone is immune to the frightened condition and to poison damage. I think I got it wrong. Where's my damage types? DMG type, of course. Of course I abbreviated it for absolutely no reason. Should there be an other damage type or maybe an other condition it should be immune to? Blinded is fine, dazed is fine, frightened, probably not. Invisible, stunned, restrained. Yeah, only frightened, I think. Because this is an emotional condition. Yeah, let's go with that. Back to the perks. So I'm kind of happy with Chaos Incarnate. We do need to change Quick Draw to make it more attractive. Hydration check. I just heard the sound of my own voice and I realized it was really raspy. If there are immunities, are there vulnerabilities like lightning? There probably should be, just because that does fit the theme of this game. Hello. Hello. It does fit the whole tactical thing where you adapt to whatever you're fighting. So I do have an electricity damage type. Acid, I guess, could also work. What do technique and presence do? So if I go to the attributes section, it lists the different attributes, but also what every single attribute does. So technique is used for a bunch of things. It's what determines how many skills you're proficient in. And in combat, you use it to dodge, you use it to do cold shots, which are basically special types of attacks which cause debuffs on your opponents. And then presence, you use it to either distract or help, which are two of the actions which, if you're bad at them, are probably the least attractive right now. But if you're really good at them, it makes a really huge difference. So basically presence is the buff my allies stat, and technique is the debuff my enemies stat. There's another thing I kind of wanted to experiment with that I haven't experimented with yet, which was to add a special effect to damage types. So let's say you crit with a weapon that deals electricity, then automatically, no matter what weapon you're using, the target is stunned or something. The reason I haven't done that yet is that if I do it this way, it feels like the special effect would be hard to find for a new player. Like, the way personally I interact with character sheets is let's open it, it's kind of slow. I look at the list of weapons, and then I pick one which sounds cool, like baseball bat, And then I go, okay, that's how much damage it deals. Cool. Then I look at the properties. Then I look at the special effect. And at no point do I really look at the special effect associated with that particular damage type. Like it feels kind of unnatural. And I don't really know how to present it well. We'll see. Tooltip on the damage type. Yeah, I could add a tooltip, but I do want people with just pen and paper to be able to play this game, even though I provide this entire website so they can have an easier time if they choose to use it. I don't want the website to be like necessary. If it's highlighted in orange, I would look at it. True. But I like the tooltips are useful, right? They're very clearly inspired by Baldur's Gate 3. And a lot of people have said very good things about them in Baldur's Gate 3. How's it going? Been a fan for a little while. Looking forward to the game. Hey, thank you. I'm doing good. I'm finally home after a very long time taking care of my family. So back to streaming, finally. What site is this, and how did you make this character sheet? So this is a website I've built myself for my own game. I do game design on YouTube, but the thing I was trained for initially was being a software engineer, so I coded all of this myself, basically. I feel like if you place the damage and their effects right before the weapons, it will be right there to help with their decision. I could put it on the weapon description. Like properties and then damage type. So instead of damage, I would have damage and damage types. I'll experiment with it one day. I just want to go through the playtest feedback first, because that's a thing where I'm basically like, this would be nice to experiment with, but I think the game can be good without it. So I'll just try for the simpler version first, and then we'll see if the game actually needs it. Not ripping your little member indicator. It's fine, we know. You're probably, along with Blake, the longest running member for this channel. I think you actually have him beat by like 5 days or something. Okay, so quick draw. Quick draw. What does quick draw do? So right now the problem with this is it's very dependent on if you have a good speed stat and if the enemies have a bad speed stat. So super unreliable. Had to look really deep for that word. Oh, Oh, it's really Sunday, yeah? I thought I was second. I don't remember because at some point one of you unsubscribe or just let it expire. So the actual analytics tab on YouTube is not showing the right amount of time that you've been subscribed. So I don't know the exact time. I've been keeping track separately from the actual YouTube tab on a separate like Google Sheet, just so I can keep track of people I owe a discount code to, or when this game is actually finished. You can have a special magic weapon feature that procs an effect based on its damage types. Oh, like a perk. I like this. Especially if I frame it as like a technician or some kind of a tinkerer ability. That could be an entire perk tree, to be honest. Like a weapon specialist. Not meaning to distract. I mean, it's a live stream. It's a conversation. It would be boring without the questions and the half an hour tangents. That's kind of the point of doing a stream, is I get to interact with people and sample some opinions, get some fresh new perspectives. That made me think, where do you draw the line between a perk and a class feature? So I don't have class feature in this case. The perk trees are the classes, if that makes sense. The only exception is I have a perk tree called generic features. So right now, these are the only two perks in the 5e sense. But I do have a lot more which are just commented out, I think. Where's my generic? Oh no, I removed them. Because I used to have like cook and athlete and a bunch of generic stuff that weren't really enough to build an entire perk tree around. But they were enough to actually to at least give a bit more flavor, you know? But yeah, this system doesn't really have classes. No worries. And the reason I don't do classes, by the way, it has absolutely nothing to do with like me preferring classless systems. It's just, realistically speaking, I'm kind of doing this entire system on my own, and it's a lot easier to come up with 5 different perks than to come up with an entire class. Like, it's just a lot less rules I have to come up with. So this is just me being either very pessimistic or at the very least very realistic about how much work I can put into this. It's just easier to write a classless system. If I had infinite time in a 20-person team, I would probably do classes instead. It could be what Quick Draw does. Probably have to rename it. Once per round, when you inflict a critical hit, apply an effect based on your damage type. Chaos Incarnate. Oh, you wrote Incarnate the exact right way. Where's my Ravager? Here. I think I'd rather make the damage type thing a separate perk tree, just because it's not a perfect fit for the aesthetic of the Ravager, I think. But I could build an entire aesthetic of like the weapon specialist who's really knowledgeable about a bunch of different types of weapons, and they're not specialized in using just one. They adapt, and they're kind of like a sci-fi witcher. They know the weaknesses of their enemies and they adapt to it. Like that could be the basis of an entire perk tree, I think. Quick draw. Quick draw could just be a bonus to your initiative, but that would be kind of weak. That would be kind of boring. Oh, and we did make Chaos Incarnate a bit stronger, so I think it needs to be more expensive. Quick draw. I guess I could make it like a Nova ability. Like, on the first round of combat, you have your maximum AP is increased by your speed. So instead of 10 plus your speed, it would be 10 plus your speed again. So you get to go really hard on that first round. Increase initiative and damage. More options, yeah. There's nothing about this that says they have to use it on attacks. It's just heavily implied, so at least it leaves the door open for a bunch of shenanigans. Okay, let's go with that, and then I can return it. I can return to it later because I know this perk tree has probably been the most popular at my table in playtests, at least so far. So it's probably going to see some more playtests. Unlike the Tinkerer, which hasn't been picked once. So I'm probably gonna have to tackle this one later. But Ravager, let's mark it as done for now, and I can return to it later. That's dev stuff. I'm gonna do the dev stuff off stream just because it's a lot harder to make it interactive and like have people give some input about the code. Remove the input. That's also a code thing. That's also a code thing. That is a game design thing, but that is going to say that is a whole beast. So right now, in terms of perk trees, where's my list of perk trees? there. So we have Sniper, which is kind of technique-based. Then we have Ravager, that's speed-based. Brawler is vigor-based, kind of. Then we have... I don't know how you guys say it in English. Trusser? Because that's a very French word. But that's the movement-focused class. So this is very much speed-based as well. But what my players have asked for is, on top of the Trusser and the Ravager, which are two speed-based perk trees, they kind of wanted a third one which would be specialized in being sneaky specifically. Can you look at the Tinkerer somewhere? Yeah, the entire website is online for free, just flareful.com. And all the rules are free until the game is at a point where I'm comfortable putting a price tag on it, basically. Which is going to be far in the future, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, you can just check it out here if you want. Tinkerer, it's online. But yeah, my players have asked for a new perk tree, which would be like Ninja or something. Like a Wasteland Shadow. I'm not sure what that would look like. I don't really have many ideas for this, which aren't just take the 5e rogue and make it sci-fi. So I can make a space for it, but I don't think I'm gonna have any fancy ideas for it just yet. I think I need to playtest the new stealth rules, which I've just overhauled. I need to playtest them a bit more, and then I can maybe see in what ways I can mess with them. How does stealth work? So it's just been overhauled like 2 weeks ago. Long story short, it's all about keeping the roll for the last possible moment, so that if the player fails, then there's an immediate consequence. It's not like they can roll bad and then they see that they roll bad and so they decide to not move in as quickly. The way it works is you take the hide action in this spot, and at that point you don't make any roll. But then if you move into the compromised area, the exposed area, at that exact moment, that is when you make the roll. How are you finding creating a whole game by yourself? It's really fun. It's a lot of work, but it's really fun. I get to... Especially at the start, since this started as a 5e fork, it's really far away from a 5e fork at this point, but it started as a 5e fork. It was really like... What's the word? Vindicative? Like, I could just pick apart every single thing that I had a gripe with and just fix it. Like the vision rules, for example. Like, I could just pick stuff that was a problem at my table and then fix it. And it was really... Like... I'm looking for a word. It's not vindicative. That's not the word I'm looking for. It was kind of like a relief. Maybe an ability to pay AP to make a silent attack, even if the weapon isn't silent. How would that work exactly? Like, in terms of aesthetic, like, are you waiting for someone else to shoot so you can shoot at the same time? Satisfying or rewarding? Yeah, I guess. 5e was a fantastic springboard for aspiring designers. Oh, absolutely. Like, I've tinkered with pretty much every single game I've ever played. I've made some mods for like Super Smash Brothers, etc. But you need to know how to code, and you need to get into the weeds of like assembly code, etc. to do these things usually. So 5e, you just need to know how to type in somewhat decent English. That's a much lower... Cathartic, yes, thank you, that's the word. Yes. Yeah, it was cathartic to start working on a completely different system. But yeah, like, usually to do video game mods, you kind of need... Like, the barriers to entry are super high, and for 5e, you kind of just need to have an idea and then share it. So it's really easy. Working on the game for 7 years, oh god. I hope being like somewhat full-time on this means I can probably sell it before 7 years. I'm hoping maybe 2 years is how much time I want to dedicate to this. More than this, and it would kind of be unresponsible. At least because I'm working full-time on this. Let's shelve the idea of the ninja for now. I will not like highlight it as done, so I know to return to it later. That's a code thing. That's also a code thing. My players have the weirdest bugs. I don't know how they do it. Let me try to reproduce it. Yeah, just the machine gun. Choose this back. Create an attack for the machine gun. Just because I know the machine gun has a reload button. So somehow, my absolute crazy players, they have managed to create a bug where if they attack too quickly and then reload too quickly, then somehow they reload past the limit. So normally, things work like this. They work just fine. Right? It goes 3, 2, 1, 0, and then you reload, and then it goes back to 3. And then if you try to attack while you don't have ammo, it tells you, okay, you can't do that. I don't know what they did, but they managed to break this. Oh, this is kind of silly. Current ammo, maximum ammo. What if I edit this manually? Okay. And I go back here and very quickly I use attacks. I have no idea. Did you ever get into changing something for the better and then realize it's not easy to fix? So my next video is actually going to be about something like this. I guess I can spoil it a bit. The other day, you might have seen a community post on my YouTube channel. Where is my YouTube channel? Oh, right, I'm not even logged in on Firefox. Reject all. Okay, so in my community tab, you might have spotted this little poll thingy where I asked people, without looking it up, without looking very specifically, the rules for opportunity attacks. do you think Dissonant Whispers in 5e provokes opportunity attacks? And you're free to actually look up Dissonant Whispers. That's fine. So Dissonant Whispers, the target makes a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, it takes 3d6 damage and must immediately use its reaction, if available, to move as far as its speed allows away from you. Do you think this forced movement provokes an opportunity attack? We got a 1 yes. I'm gonna vote for you. Oh, I need to log in order to do that. Okay, since it's my account, I can't actually vote. Yeah, and we got about what I expected, which is a slight majority where you can kind of see it on YouTube of no, but at least the people were very divided, right? Like, this is a question where people, like, there isn't really a consensus that is really obvious, where people go, okay, yeah, obviously it's a yes, or obviously it's a no. There's a lot of people with different opinions about this. I voted properly on the YouTube poll, but misinterpreted it on Twitter. Oh, okay. On Twitter, the results were mostly yes. I think it was about 60% yes, which I kind of attribute to the fact that a lot of people who follow me on Twitter are like game designers and TTRPG publishers. Like, most of the people who follow me on Twitter, they followed me when I published my book on DM's Guild. So these are mostly people who kind of want to work with me rather than buy my books, if that makes sense. So those people are really knowledgeable usually about D&D and like the super nerdy edge cases that you only know about if you're like super invested in D&D. But on YouTube, it's a more representative sample of, I think, just regular people and how they play the game. Now it's died. Oh. So this is a pretty well-known gotcha thing. Like, if you're a super 5e nerd, you probably know about this already. But yes, Dissonant Whisper does actually provoke opportunity attacks. A lot of people think it doesn't because of a saying which is, quote-unquote, provoked movement does not... forced movement does not provoke attack of opportunity. That's actually not a rule in 5e, that's a rule from 4th edition. In 5e, the rule is actually a bit different. Opportunity... No, that's not the rule. Where is the rule? I think it should be this page. Okay, yeah. When a creature you can see moves out of your reach. No, that's not the one. You also don't provoke an opportunity attack when you teleport or while someone or something moves you without using your movement, action, or reaction. So the idea of forced movement, that's actually not a thing in 5e, if you're being super nerdy. The reason Dissonant Whispers actually does provoke opportunity attacks is that the target has to use its reaction. That's the reason it works the way it does. But, like, this is really hard to remember, right? So that's why a lot of people instead use the shorthand version, which is forced movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks, and that's why a lot of people get it quote-unquote wrong. I say quote-unquote wrong because, to me, like, game design is kind of like a language, especially for tabletop RPGs. So if the language is so confused and so complex that people get it quote-unquote wrong most of the time, then it's the game who is wrong. The people are actually right in this case. So when I talked about this with a bunch of other tabletop designers. We kind of discussed about how should we fix this? And there's a lot of ways you could go about this, right? You could make the simpler version the rule. Another way we kind of wondered, hey, we could fix it this way, was we could take the Dissonant Whisper spell. Where is it? This thing. And we could add a sentence at the end that says, this force movement does provoke opportunity attacks. But there's a reason why you don't actually want to do that. Let's see if you guys can guess it in the chat. Why do you not want to add a sentence that says, okay, this is actually intended. This is the way the spell is supposed to work. It's fine. It's not going to break things. You can use opportunity attacks with this spell. Oh, sorry. I just bumped into my mic. And this got me to... This was my suggestion to try to improve this spell by very explicitly saying that this is the intended way it works. It's making an exception. Exactly. Yes. That's... I think it was Kibbles Tasty who told me, like, yo, don't do that. I've tried it and it was terrible. So, yes, this is creating an exception. So, in the player's minds, if you add a sentence that says, this is how the rules work, then you're creating an exception. So, the player is going to assume that the general rule is the opposite of that. So the player is going to assume, okay, because this spell states that the exception is this provoke movement does provoke opportunity attacks, then the general rule should be the opposite, that force movement does not provoke opportunity attacks. So you can't actually add like a rules reminder to a spell. That's kind of why in a lot of my game you'll see, you will see rules reminder, because I do like this, but you will see it in these sidebars type of things. You won't see it in black on white text. You'll always see it in a sidebar. If any other spell does not have that line, it will be treated accordingly. Yeah, exactly. So my fix was terrible. And I was called out on it by other designers. Yeah. I was told, yeah, don't fix it like this. It's going to create more problems. And stuff like this happens all the time. Yeah, all the time. What were we trying to fix? Okay, this bug, I cannot even reproduce it, so I don't know how to fix it. You need to make the change to... Yeah, I think that's what you need to do. You need to change this rule so people actually remember it. Have we seen what the rule for opportunity attacks looks like in 2024 D&D? I kind of lost track of it. Okay, so that's dev stuff again. Okay, this is game design. That's probably the last thing I'll do for this stream, because this one is a bit of a chunker. So, I did a playtest on this map. And the goal of the playtest was to see how the gadget system, which I have implemented, would work for the players. So in this map, this was kind of a stealth-focused map. You had cameras and you had speakers with alarm speakers. So that's one of the gadgets that's given as an example in the encounters section right now. So yeah, you have the security office where you have a computer screen. Then you have a bunch of cameras, which are linked with a cable to the computer screen. And then the security officer, if they see an intruder on any of the cameras, they can press a button, and that will, through another cable, that will get the loudspeakers to blare like a loud beep and alarm everyone that there's an intruder. So that's kind of the basic implementation of the gadgets as an obstacle rather than as a thing the players can use to overcome obstacles. So to basically can you translate? Is it in French? Oh, yeah, it's in French. So the gadget system is for now something that's very experimental. It's kind of intended to be a way for player characters to have a lot of ways to approach problems which don't necessarily involve combat. If you've played Fallout 4, it's very reminiscent of that. You've got like gadgets and they emit signals, and the way it works mechanically is not really important. The reason they exist at all to me is it gives a lot of opportunities for non-combat encounters and puzzles and all of that stuff. And there's kind of two ways you can use it. Either the players can use it as tools and stuff their characters can do on top of just skill checks, or the bad guys can use it as defenses for whatever they're trying to defend. So this playtest was about seeing how it would go for the players going against a bunch of gadgets. How would the interactions with these gadgets work? So if I go to gadgets, and there were a bunch of issues, which is normal. This was a first draft kind of mechanic. Cyberpunk Netrunner, kind of. That is kind of the idea. There's no like complete separate reality where one person is playing a completely different game, but yeah, the aesthetic of being like a hacker or a tinkerer, that was very much the idea. So we tested a bunch of different ways to mess with gadgets. Right now, you need to be within 1 meter and use an action in order to mess with a gadget. And you can either remove one of the components on the gadget or add one of your own components on the gadget. And the way hacking, quote unquote, works is the last person who has added or removed a component from a gadget gets to basically decide how the gadget works. So in this example, you have two gadgets which are linked. You have one gadget with a control panel which sends instructions as a signal, and then you have a toy car which is linked to it with a cable with a robot arm on it. So the toy car and the robot arm can consume an instructions type signal to do a bunch of different things. But if, let's say, you add another cable to this gadget here, then you get to decide, okay, Actually, when the car receives an instruction, instead of going forwards, it goes backwards or something. So that's kind of how it's set up right now. The problem is I used a turret in that playtest. Oh, don't worry about that too much. That's not a bug, that's a feature. Just an unintended one. Where's my turret? I'm sure I had a security turret in here somewhere. Was it in the gadgets example? Oh yeah, it was this thing. So we had a turret. And this one in particular was really bad. The play feel was just completely messy. Because this is a thing that attacks you, but it's also not really a monster, so we don't really know, like, what is its initiative? When does it attack? Does it attack when its sensor picks up something, or when someone uses an action to activate it or something? It was super messy. The protective plating as well, that was intended to kind of make the gadget more interesting. That kind of backfired. Going back to your ninja concept, seems like it would synergize with being invisible from cameras, etc. I should probably write that down as well. Stealth, focused, perk tree, ideas. I'm just gonna throw it on there somewhere. So not just stealth, but also hacking. So what was the exact list of stuff my players wrote down? Right, so right now the way you would attack one of these things is you choose which components you're firing at. And during the playtest, I changed the way protective plating worked. So if there's protective plating and you attack a component that's adjacent to it, then it's the protective plating that takes the attack instead. So you need to get through these three things before you get to attack these three things. And that was just messy. That was not good. It just felt like maybe these gadgets should only be usable by players, which was not the intent. There was also a problem where, because you could target different components, if you had one player targeting, like, let's say the computer, and then another player was targeting the chassis itself, like the frame for the gadget, one of these players would be wasting actions. Because if the frame gets destroyed, then everything on it gets destroyed, but if the computer gets destroyed, then only the computer gets destroyed. So they're kind of competing to see who gets to destroy what they're shooting at first. Do you have anything like a damage threshold? Yeah, what is it exactly so I don't get it wrong? Yeah, they have 5 hit points and 5 armor. So generally speaking, they should take about 2 to 3 hits to take down one of the components. The frames have a bit more. The frame have 20 hit points and 10 armor, for example, for this one. But it depends on the exact frame you're looking at. So this one has 10 hit points and 10 armor instead. The way armor works for gadgets, at least right now, it's the same as for basically any creature, which is where is it? Oh no, that's the list of actual armors you can wear. It's in 5e words, it would be temporary hit points which refresh at the start of every single creature's turn. So if something has an armor of 10, you need to deal at least 11 damage in a single turn in order to damage it. Which is really good for promoting team play. But in this case, it kind of backfired. Because one person shooting at the frame and one other person shooting at the terminal, they ended up wasting a bunch of actions, which is the opposite of team play. Easy to hit and a few hit points, but you gotta hit hard to do anything. That's kind of what's happening right now. Kind of. Oh, yeah, I forgot that. One of the players tried to distract a gadget. And since gadgets don't have stats, and the distract action asks the target to make a roll, I didn't know what to do. So yeah, the approach I have right now for gadgets, I think, is just... I just need to overhaul this. Perhaps it's just one combined object, no parts. It could be. At least for the purposes of combat. I'm getting so many alerts from the Kraken Week Discord. Sorry. I don't know if you can hear them. I should have disabled it in OBS, but you might hear it from just my headphones. Let's go to gadgets. So that's the markdown for this page. Okay, don't hear the pings. Cool. I'll just put myself in busy just in case. There we go. Should be a... at least for me, it's going to be more comfortable. So it's in gadgets in combat. So in combat, gadgets act after every other creature as though they were a creature with an initiative of -1. A frame and its components can be attacked separately. Unless specified otherwise, it has 5 hit points and 5 armor. It regains its hit points at the end of a short rest. So that's fine. This part is a problem. It ended up causing a bunch of problems of players wasting actions. And then we also need to figure out what are its stats. Does it just roll with a +0 to everything? Let's experiment with a bunch of different ideas. So first idea, you can't actually attack the individual components. In order to do that, you need to actually be in melee with it and hack it. So a gadget's armor and hit points are determined by its frame. And since a gadget is not a creature, it cannot be distracted. What's the other actions? I mean, it's all three of these, like the disruptive actions. Is the only source of armor the armor plating component, or do the other components have some armor themselves? At least in the current version, they have 5, like each component has 5 hit points and 5 armor. Unless stated otherwise, but I think only the frames state otherwise. Unspent actions to armor would also make sense to some degree. Unspent actions. I don't understand. Are you saying like the idea that I was talking about earlier, where one player is attacking the frame and then another player is attacking something else? So one of them is wasting actions because they're kind of like in a race to see whoever destroys it first? You can attack that from either angle, how much you can give to someone or how much you can hold. I still don't understand. Just to make sure, are you like really far back in the stream? Because I don't understand what... Maybe it's just the 2.5 hours of stream that's catching up to me right now, I don't know. Let's just add some tooltips here because my brain is fried and I can't think of how to fix this. Rules, armor, and then rules, hit points. Yeah, I think you were just really far back. So talking about something else than the rest of us. So that's kind of one way to simplify the whole interacting with gadgets, with hostile gadgets, is you don't get to target the different components unless you're within 1 meter of the gadget. Then you get to actually plug off some stuff. Oh yeah, you're talking about the sprint where someone is down. I think that was like an hour ago. I actually forgot this is how I ruled signal ownership. Oops. Okay then. So apparently that was a lot smarter than I remembered. So it's not that you gain control of a gadget as soon as you mess with it. It's when you add a sensor specifically to a gadget, you gain control of the types of signals that sensor controls. So it's a lot more nuanced actually. And I completely forgot about it. So back to that Dissonant Whispers example. If I forgot how this works, even though I made the game, is it really a good rule? Okay, so the hacking kind of works. I think I'm going to change the protective plating to protect against hacking. Like the first time you try to add a component or remove it, you need to remove the protecting plating first. So that's going to take a bunch of actions. Or maybe the protective plating could be like a cold shot option, I guess. Let's go with that. I'll experiment with it again. I think this system is not necessarily something I want to just delete. I think there's potential, it's just I haven't been able to figure out exactly the how. But there's potential here. If I change the protective plating, instead of this, where you can target individual components, it would be this plating. Okay, removing this plating takes or any adjacent component takes 1 hour. So if you're the person who has crafted this gadget, you can still do it, but in a combat situation where there's urgency, it's not an option. However, the gadget it's not gains. What's the word I'm looking for? The verb I'm looking for. Where the gadget, it's not that they gain a new cold shot option. They just have it. This is not good. I don't know how to phrase this well, because in the... No, that's not a stat block. In a creature stat block, I can just list the cold shot options very easily. Like this. Fuel cell, DC 8, and then the effect. Thesaurus, come to my rescue. Acquire, synonym. Receive. Oh, receive is a good word. No, because receive is like an event, one event in time. So it doesn't actually work in this case. It's not you receive it and then you have received it. It's while you have the protective plating, you have this cold shot option. The fact that I'm not a native English speaker is slowing me down so much. Cold shot option, so action. cold shot. See how that looks. Gadgets, we have the frames. Where's the protective plating? Did I put it at the end? I put it in peripheral, okay. Okay, I'm kind of okay with this wording. So, the gadget has a new cold shot option, which is the plating itself with a DC of 8. And if you land this cold shot, the effect is your attack deals no damage to the frame, otherwise you risk destroying the entire gadget when the reason you're doing that is to unplug a component and not destroy the entire gadget. But one protective plating of your choice on this gadget is destroyed. So with this, you create a situation where here you could either target the frame itself and destroy the entire turret, or you could do a bunch of cold shots to destroy the 3 protective platings, and then use an object action to just unplug one of the components. I think that dynamic I'm actually okay with. If I were to review and revise something, say the Tinkerer, how do you submit feedback? So there should be a link to my Discord server down below. That's kind of where I interact with the community the most. In the video description. That's probably the best way. There's a... Let me see if I can show this without leaking anything. Should be fine. There's a Flareful channel on my server. Over here. That's a good way to talk about this. Don't want to overstep. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. I don't promise that I will act on any feedback I get, just to be clear. But I am always looking for feedback. There's always a chance that I will go the exact opposite direction of whatever you're suggesting. Just because of some weird goal I had that I haven't talked on stream or something. That's always a possibility, just to be clear. But yeah, feedback is always welcome. Especially if, in this case, I very specifically told you, yeah, my players are not interested in this, so there's clearly a problem, and I'm definitely gonna take a look at it. Like, yeah, this thing is gonna see some changes. Just don't know what changes yet. So I think this is... I'm not gonna call this gadget system done because it's still very, very experimental, and I still haven't even tested the let's give my players a bunch of gadgets and see how they use them part of the gadget system. But at least I think I've fixed the issues we have identified during the last playtest. So I'm willing to run a different playtest and see how things go with this new approach. And see if it just creates a bunch of new problems, basically. We'll see how it goes. I still probably have enough time, like I'm probably gonna end the stream in like 15 minutes or so. I still probably have time for one more thing, if it's like a tiny little piece of feedback. Okay, this one was interesting. So one of the issues my players raised is, let's take a look at the list of actions. So there's a bunch of different actions. The idea, I've talked about this a bit earlier in the stream, is I give the players a very short list of actions. In this case, there's, I think, 10 of them, maybe a bit more, like maybe 13 of them. But since you get to take more than one action per turn, that means with just a very small list of actions, you can have a very wide variety of different turns that you can take. So you can take like move and then brace and then hide, or like move and then attack and then reload, and then you can take sprint, cold shot, use an object. Like there's a lot of variety just because of the wonderful power of multiplications and mathematics, right? The problem is I've introduced this thing called focus, which is kind of like concentration in 5th edition. So it's a thing. I'm just going to read the rule. Certain actions such as aiming require a certain degree of concentration. Those actions stipulate that they require your focus. Your character can only focus on one thing at a time. If you focus on something else, the effect associated with your previous focus ends. Your focus is broken if you move or are reduced to 0 hit points. So unlike 5e where you have to make a save, etc., in this case your focus is broken if you move. And that's very important in the way I design combat. There's a lot of reasons for you to move in this system, whether that's telegraphed attacks, I've talked about this earlier in the stream, or just enemies that will bonk you really hard and move you forcefully. So there's a lot of things which make movement interesting, or at least that's what I'm trying to do. So instead of having a bunch of saves, what 5e would call concentration, here it's focused, it's tied to your movement. And then you cannot benefit from the effects of a rest if you are focused during that rest. So that's pretty much 5e concentration, the only difference being it's tied to your movement, and as soon as you move, you lose focus. The reason that's a bit of a problem that we identified in the last playtest was that there's so many actions that take focus that these actions are completely incompatible, and you're never gonna be able to take the brace and the hide action on the same turn, or the brace and the aim action on the same turn, just because they take focus as well. So that goes against the entire point of having this list of actions and then a multi-action system, because that reduces the variety of the turns you're gonna take instead of increasing it. I have no idea how to fix this. This was very much a surprise during the last playtest. It kind of blindsided me. In 5e, I think the idea of concentration is mostly a balancing concern. You don't want the spellcasters, especially, to be able to put out 15 different effects at the same time. That's going to be way too strong and also way too difficult to keep track of. The way I have designed them as well is because they require focus, I've designed these abilities in a way where they can't stack with themselves, right? So you can't double brace. And so the effect is only fine if you can't double brace, right? I can't just make the change of until the start of your next turn and then call it a day, because if I do this, then it becomes possible for a player character to have an armor of like 25, which in this system is not okay. They're never gonna get hit. What made you decide to implement focus? To be honest, this started as a 5e clone, or fork, I guess, so I kind of started with it. And the more I think about it, the less it feels like a necessary thing. It just felt cool, but I don't know if I need it. It has created a lot of situations in playtests where the decision of whether or not to focus and then the decision of whether or not to move led to some interesting tactical decisions. But I don't know if it's worth it in the end, if it reduces the variety so much. Because yeah, I have seen at my table that, yeah, players will take the attack action most of the time in the end. Even if I make team play super useful, we still see the attack action most of the time, and that's not something I want. What I did with my exploration system was state that all actions have a limit of 1 use per turn, and then made exceptions. Ah, so every action except attack could only be used once per turn? And movement, I guess, is also something I wouldn't want a limit on. This could be a lever, yeah. A way to limit this effect, which could get crazy if you can stack it. Because if you brace once, that basically means your enemy has to attack you one more time in a single turn, more or less. But at some point, they're gonna run out of attacks before you run out of braces. Since you start with a bit of armor, and they don't start with a bit of damage. There's probably a way to do this. One approach could be, because I have these action categories, right? I have movement actions, defensive actions, weapon actions, disruptive actions. I could say you can only focus on one thing from each action category at a time. So you can only focus on one defensive action, but you can also aim at the same time because that's a different category. That feels really hard to keep track of. Like, unnecessary so. Should I just remove the limitation that you can focus on a single thing at a time? Do I need that limitation? Because the movement part of focus, I'm very happy with. The fact that you have a bunch of stuff that ends if you move, that I'm perfectly happy with. It's really just the incompatibility that I have a problem with. There's definitely something that testing will reveal, yeah. I could make it tied to a stat as well. I don't want... I mean, I could make it technique. But technique is already being used a lot in this system. I could make it... you can only focus on a number of things equal to your technique. So a high technique character could like brace 5 times. Oh god, that's a really bad idea. Let's not do that. Let's see. I'll just save my code real fast. What did I go through today? I reimagined the gadgets and the silencers and the Ravager. And then okay, I'm just gonna save this so I can very easily revert back to it. Let's try to rewrite the current actions so that you can focus on more than one thing at a time. And see where it brings us. Maybe there's some hidden gold at the end of the rainbow that we can't see yet. So this part is gone. Actually, let's write it down. You can focus on multiple things at a time, but if your focus is broken, all of the effects you were focusing on end simultaneously. So it's kind of a high risk, high reward type of thing. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so back to the actions. I'm just gonna search, focus. So apparently 7 of the actions use it. Which is a lot. Okay, so brace. So brace is the defensive action which scales with your vigor. Right now, the thing it does is it increases your armor, which is which is a thing that is okay to happen once per turn. But I'm really not I'm really not okay with having it happen multiple times. When the flare has fallen. Welcome to the stream. We're just about to wrap it up actually. I guess I could reintroduce the concept of actual temporary hit points here. Let's try this. You gain a number of hit points. I'm gonna ignore the tooltips for now. I'm gonna add them later if needed. The flare fell so quickly. It has been a month since I've been able to stream, so I've had a lot to do today. We're still only halfway through the giant to-do list, and that's just the feedback from like 3 playtests. So don't worry, there's going to be other streams. Probably same time next Sunday. You lose. I don't like this. I don't like this wording. I don't like the fact that it's hit points. I think it needs to be a different thing. Should really check out the playtest next time you have one. For now, I'm only running playtests with my own table, just because the game is not really in a state that's mature enough to run it with people who aren't like old-time friends, I think. But we are running pretty much weekly playtests. I haven't run one this week, just because it was Kraken week, so I was in the video editing mines, just hammering away at my last video. But next week we should be able to run one. So we're making some progress. Eventually, I'm gonna use this little website you might have heard of, because I made it, called Quest Check, to actually organize some paid playtests. But it's going to be a little while. Hope it goes really well. I hope it goes really bad, so that I have a lot of things to fix. That's my goal with playtests. Oh god. A Trek test. I think the term I have coined for this is a Trek experiment, and I am so sorry about this. Whenever you take damage, you can spend brace tokens to reduce the damage, by the amount of tokens spent. The exact wording is terrible right now, but at least it gets the idea across. So instead of increasing your armor, now it's like an extra pool of temporary hit points, which you lose if you lose focus. It's just a silly running gag with my friends, which is we try to name everything like Batman would. So my apartment is called the Trekcave. And then my car, when I used to have one, was called the Trekmobile. So of course my playtest would be the Treksperiment. So hide, you can't double hide, and I think I'm fine with that, because the effect of hiding is hostile creatures can't attack you, so there would be no sense in stacking this anyway. So I think I'm kind of okay with that. Dodge is something different. So right now the way dodge works right now is it gives you a special type of condition. Where the people who attack you have to beat you in a contested technique check, basically. So I guess there would be a sense in rolling this multiple times. You're just fishing for a higher result. I guess this one doesn't actually need to change. At least we'll see how it goes. I've already changed it a bit because it used to be that you made a roll every time someone attacked you, which was really strong because that meant pretty much 50% of the attacks you would get, like you would roll pretty high, and that would make it really powerful. Where here, 50% of the time, you're gonna roll terribly. So you're gonna just waste your action. We'll see. I need to actually test this first. Okay, what's the next thing that takes focus? The aim action. So right now, how it works is choose a creature you can see until you lose focus or lose track of the creature's position. This should say until you can't see the creature, because this is old wording using the old stealth rules. You have advantage on attacks against it, and you have advantage on technique rolls to use cold shot against this creature. So this is actually okay as is, because in this game advantage stacks. So you can aim multiple times and it's not going to break anything. You're just going to gain double advantage. I remember 3.5 D&D had some mechanics that would just give you a flat miss chance on top of your AC, like the blur spell. Oh yeah, like the mirror image in 5e. Anyone who attacks has a 20% chance of missing regardless of anything else. Yup, that's brutal. It's a defensive action. I'm kind of okay with this. I think a lot of you might have seen the MCDM video about the null result, what they call the null result, which is a turn where nothing happens. And to them, because they're running a heroic game, that is something they want to avoid. They're trying to run away from it as much as possible. They try to make it completely impossible to have a null result. But here, my main focus is on this being a tactical game. So a game where there are good choices and bad choices, and determining what the good choices are. Maybe it takes a lot of skill, maybe it's not very easy, maybe sometimes you have to make a call where you don't have all of the information, etc. But there should be bad choices. That does mean sometimes what you choose ends up being not very effective. So I'm not super afraid of the null result. I think it's part of the experience for this game. At least that's been my outlook on things for now, and it has been pretty successful in playtests. We did have a creature which caused a lot of null results. This big guy over here, the big robot with a massive 15 armor. It's true that it does sound very sci-fi. So I guess that might be why I'm okay with it. But yeah, this guy has a lot of armor, and what happened was, because my players couldn't hit it, and back then we didn't have the help action, so it was really hard to team up to beat this guy. There was this cold shot option, which did reduce the big robot's armor permanently, but as you can see, I made it a very hard DC. In this game, DC 12 is the highest DC you could possibly have. So my players saw this cold shot option and decided not to do it because it was really hard to land. So I think I should have probably reduced this to maybe 1 or 2 and then reduce the DC to 8. Just really bait my players into going after this guy's armor. But yeah, because we got a lot of null results, my players decided to just ignore this guy. He's still alive in the playtest, actually. He's still over here, trudging along, being a big robot, being very angry because my players just stole all of the data in the entire data center. They just ran circles around him, pick up the data in this computer and then made a run for it. So they tried to avoid this guy, which I'm kind of okay with. That's a valid way to approach this situation, I think. But if this was a boss fight, they would have had to actually figure out something else. We were on the actions which require focus. So aim is fine because advantage stacks. What else requires focus? No, that's not what I wanted to open. Grappling requires focus. That robot will be a fun surprise for the people who come here next and can't get any of the data. Oops. I really like cold shots as a thing in the enemy stat block. Yeah, that's been so far, like, I've talked about this a bit, but most of the stuff I make seems to be focused towards GMs, and that's kind of worrying me a bit. Because as we've seen throughout this stream, the player options side of this game is not nearly as mature. it might be a problem. I might need to focus more on the players at one point, but yeah, this has led to some fun. Like the spider drone, you have a cold shot which just one shots it and then it explodes and it deals damage in an area of effect. Yeah, we like this. Okay, so grapple takes focus. So right now the only thing that this does, besides the fact that you can't move the grapple creature without breaking the grapple, is that it also makes it so you can only grapple one creature at a time. I'm over here making 999 homebrew 5e subclasses and 3 monsters. Ouch. Hey, it's fine, like... I'm pretty much the opposite. I've made a couple subclasses on my website. You can find, I think, all of the subclasses I've ever made. Which is 8 of them. They're pretty cool, but there's 8 of them. And then if you go to the monsters section, there's a few more. There's like a few more. Oh, I need to update this. I need to update this for season 2 of Arcane. Oh, this is gonna be sick. Okay, that's for later. The player's options being simple and then becoming complicated when their actions are used in specific ways unique to the situation isn't bad at all. Thank you. Yeah, that's the idea. One thing I need to update about the cold shots, by the way. I have changed the way stat blocks work a bit. It hasn't been reflected here yet, but I've talked about this a bit on Discord. The problem I have with stat blocks being presented this way, right here, where you have actions which cost action points. The entire reason behind the action point system is to, again, provide the players with a bunch of tactical options and make sure that they don't ever take the same turn twice. They have like hundreds of options of what to do on their turn, and they are being judged on how well they can choose between these hundreds of options. That is good for the players, but as a GM, when I'm like juggling 10 different creatures and like 3 different stat blocks, my main goal as a GM is to give my players some interesting tactical choices, but I'm not really interested in being judged on my tactical choices as the GM, if that makes sense. So I've kind of started reworking those stat blocks. I think there's an example in the humanoids. Yeah, the raiders. So here we have pistol ×2. So this is much closer to 5e, where you have like a multi-attack. The raider overlord attacks with his chainsaw twice, or he uses a frag grenade and then braces. I'm not sure how I will present it, because I want there to be at least a couple options of what the bad guys can do, but at least presenting it this way, where I don't have to make as many choices as the GM. That's really helpful. This runs much smoother than this guy over here with all of the action points. So we're gonna have to figure it out. It's still very early. Like this game has been in development for 3 years, but like in active development for 4 months by all of an entire army of one person. So this game is gonna evolve a lot before I even consider adding a price tag to it. The GM can only hold so much in their heads. They only have to run the environment and the baddies. Yeah, exactly. And like, I have a very different focus, right? As a player, overcoming the obstacles, it makes me feel like the smartest person in the room. So I want to be given obstacles which demand me to be smart. But as a GM, I don't really care for that. I just want to give my players obstacles that will make them feel smart. I don't care for feeling smart myself. I know I'm an idiot. I just have a lot of toys. So it's a lot more asymmetric, right? Which can be a problem because you kind of have to have 2 sets of rules where the creatures controlled by the plot twister don't really work the same way as player characters. But I'm kind of fine with that. Because either way, like, yes, that makes the game a bit harder to learn since you have 2 sets of rules of how things work. But at the same time, if you don't have that, you have very complicated monsters, so that's also very hard to learn. Yeah, trying to show how to show off as a GM usually. Oh god, it's really Sunday. Ooh. It's a road that leads to disaster. Articulation is a thing I can do if I focus on it. So we had grappling. So the problem with grappling is do I want to let people grapple more than one creature? I think I'll just limit it to one creature. I'm okay with limiting one action. I think I'm kind of fine with that, especially since you already have 2 other options for this one action. Grappling more than one thing doesn't seem like it would be practical in real life. Yeah, like it would make just attacking it very difficult. Maybe that can be a perk, but yeah, I think the general rule is fine if you can only grapple one creature at a time. So what do we have other than grappling, which uses focus? Taunt. Okay, let's look at taunt. So distract. Choose one creature you can see and roll presence contested by the creature's presence or technique. If you win, choose one of the following effects. Taunt. Until you focus, the creature has disadvantage on attacks against creatures other than you. Or vex, the creature loses focus. If you take this action while hidden, you are no longer hidden, because yeah, it's a presence check. I think this is fine as is, because again, disadvantage can stack. So I guess you could multi-taunt or taunt multiple creatures. I'm kind of fine with that. I don't think that's gonna cause problems, or if it causes problems, we'll deal with it, but like, I would need to see the problems in a playtest first. I'm not gonna preemptively get rid of it. And then, is that the last one? Yeah, the last one is analyze. So analyze, 5 action points, choose one, choose a creature you can see and roll technique. You learn all of the possible cold shots for that creature whose DC is lower than your result. So that's how you get to learn about cold shots. Choose a gadget you can see and roll technique. You learn all of its components and properties. This actually needs a DC. So I'm just gonna do that real quick. Choose a gadget you can see and roll and make an easy DC 8 technique roll. You learn all of its components and their properties. Then roll a medium technique check. Until you lose focus, you can see in darkness up to 20 meters away from you, and you can see double the distance, the normal distance, into fog. Okay, I remember adding that. We haven't actually used this in a playtest yet. I don't know if my players have even noticed that this is here. The idea here is you sacrifice your movement in exchange for having a slightly better vision temporarily than everyone else. Are cold shots that are hard to hit always going to be hard to spot? That's kind of how I'm doing it right now. I'm open to the idea that this is a terrible idea and that I should change it though. Let's take a look at the cold shots I have right now. Yeah, that doesn't really make sense, does it? Like, you should be able to see that a head on someone exists. I guess if I want a cold shot option to be hidden, I could make it part of the cold shot option itself. Like, I could add fuel cell DC 8 and then spot DC 10 or something. Yeah, this kind of doesn't make sense, does it? What about the big robot plate joint? So we said that this would need to be much lower. And then the hard light generator, that's a thing that disables some of its actions. Yeah, this is not great. Let's just give it a fixed DC, I think. Choose a creature you can see and make an easy. We're gonna see if easy is too easy later. DC 8 technique roll. On a success, you learn all of the possible cold shots for that creature. Period. On a success also needs to be here. And since I'm using a flat DC for all of these, I'm just gonna refactor this. Make an easy technique. On a success, choose one. Choose a creature you can see. You learn all of the possible cold shots options for that creature. To the gadget you can see. You learn all of its components. Or until you lose focus, you can see in darkness up to 20 meters away from you. And you can see double the normal distance into fog. Maybe a good check makes those cold shots easier to hit. So I already have a thing that makes cold shots easier to hit. The aim action, it gives you advantage on attacks, so you deal more damage, and also on cold shots. And since advantage stacks, you can aim multiple times if you want to. So I could, but that's probably going to be doing double duty here, since I already have this. Okay, so how... I'm gonna make an executive call here. Since I haven't seen this used in playtests yet, I'm gonna leave it as it is, and then we're gonna see if this needs to change later, I think. Because this is very new and experimental. Like, there's not really a thing that works like this in 5e, so I don't have experience seeing something similar to it in play. So I think what makes the most sense to me is just wait until my players use it, see all of the ways it is broken, and then we go from here. But yeah, I think I'm kind of happy with this. I'm kind of happy to at least see it in play, and then if it sucks, I'll just revert the code to what it was before. Creatures can now focus on multiple things. And with this 15-minute segment, which ended up being 45 minutes, I think it is time for me to look at my dog, who is looking at me, who really wants to go outside. So maybe I should probably be a good human and well, good modron, of course, and take care of him. But yeah, thank you everyone for hanging out. He just sneezed. He just needs to acknowledge that this is the time. Yeah, thank you everyone for hanging out. Hope you had a good time. Can I figure out live how to do a raid on YouTube? I tried to find it the other day and I couldn't. Yeah, I need to ask someone who is more familiar with YouTube streaming how to do this. But yeah, thank you. Next video is going to be a bit special. You can see these days I'm kind of experimenting a bit. I'm doing one regular video, one experiment, one regular video, one experiment. So next video is going to be like a tiny, like 5-minute video just to see how it goes. And then we're going to go back to the super nerdy, like 15-minute video essay. So yeah, thank you. And next stream, we're probably going to be doing something very similar, where we're kind of just hanging out, answering questions and going through the playtest feedback. There's going to be probably a whole other page of playtest feedback by the time I return to this. It's fine. This is my life now. Yeah, thank you, and see you around.